All right, good morning. It is November 20th of 2020, and we are potentially starting to see some ends in sight for this pandemic with the vaccines making progress. This is the last Turfgrass Team Times of the year, which is completely irrelevant to the pandemic, but we do hope it helps you guys and gals wrap up. Online today, we got Dr. Drs Shetlar, Dr. Dave Gardner, Pam Sherratt, and Joe Rimelspach, and myself, Ed Nangle. So first up today is Pam Sherratt. Pam.
Good morning, everybody. So looking at the forecast, it looks like we've still got a fairly decent 2 or 3 weeks lined up. And so my only message right now would be that it's still not too late to do some of those really important fall operations. So absolutely everything you do now will only help in the spring. So aeration, soil cultivation, top dressing, weed control now's a great time for weed control, broadleaf weed control, which I know Dr. Gardner will talk about. And then I am driving around town and I'm seeing a lot of baseball and softball fields covered in weeds. So, you know, don't stop dragging. There's soil sterilants they can use. There's pre-emergent herbicides you can use. Deal with that now, and then you're not having to deal with it in the spring. So that would be my only thought right now, is just to maximize this time, because everything you do now will reap the benefits in the spring. I wanted to mention I'm really excited about our speakers at OTF. Our sports turf speakers, our academics are Dr. Chase Straw and Dr. Beth Gertle and PhD candidate Paige Boyle. They're coming in to talk about managing athletic fields and fertility programs, earthworm controls, soil ecology, clover mixes, which I know are getting more popular. And then I'm really excited about some of our industry professionals, Ben Jackson from Columbus Crew, TJ Brewer from the Bengals, Steve Lord from the Reds. A new speaker for us, Alpha Jones, is going to be on the program too, which I'm really excited about. He'll be talking about baseball. So we've got a really solid sports turf education program lined up, and I'm really excited to see everybody join the conference. So that's all I have. Thank you, Dr. Nangle.
Thanks, Pam. Appreciate it. All right, next up, the infamous Dr. Dave Gardner in his rather palatial looking seat.
All right, so yes, it is the middle of November, but as Pam said, it's not too late to be doing some rather important agronomic operations on your turf. You still have to mow. I'm going to mow today. I mowed 5 days ago. Actually, my grass is growing faster now than it was in the middle of July. And so that's something that I see a lot of my neighbors starting to ignore. The problem with letting the grass grow too long is, it can have some deleterious agronomic effects, increased disease incidence. It's not the greatest thing for, the health of the turf to leave it go too long during the winter time. So just be aware that those operations are still necessary. And since we're having a relatively warm November, I think the average temperature right now for the month is like 49 degrees. So, we're running about 10 degrees warmer for this month of November than we have the last 2 Novembers. So, things are still growing relatively well. Along those lines, in addition to the mowing, herbicides. This is the ideal time to control broadleaf weeds, perennial broadleaf weeds with herbicides. For those in the lawn care industry, it does not, from a business standpoint, substitute for doing your spring herbicide applications, but agronomically, we've known for a very long time that this is actually the most effective time of year to control perennial weeds. So what I would say is that if you have those clients that have difficult weeds like ground ivy and et cetera, we know that our herbicides tend to work better at this time of year. So take the opportunity to go out and make those applications. Just make sure that you're using the right types of herbicides. And specifically what I mean by that are the ester formulations. If you use amine formulations, those tend to not work well in cool weather. You want to make sure that you're using the ester formulations. But again, so long as the temperatures hold above 45 to 50 degrees, we can still get relatively good control of perennial broadleaf weeds. And then also winter annual broadleaf weeds are becoming more prevalent, more of an issue, and they're a lot easier to try to control now than they will be with post-emergence herbicides. in the spring. So that's the one thing that I would point out, is that it's not too late to be doing those herbicide applications. Actually, if anything, they'll probably work better now than they did earlier in the year. So that's what I wanted to talk about this week, but I also want to extend an invitation to attend the virtual OTF conference in January. We've got a very good program that we've worked hard to put on, and you know, there's a lot of things happening with herbicides. There's a lot of new products that are on the market, and you know, we'll have a variety of presentations that talk about those new materials. You know, we've got some panels that I think are pretty exciting, and so looking forward to everybody hopefully being able to attend.
Thanks, Dave. Yes, folks, I will tell you this. It has been an interesting proposition to get us to where we are on the OTF schedule. This year, I will say, at best, has been a nightmare. But many of you have had other problems that are more serious. And so we have carried on, and that has been the approach. Without further ado, however, one thing I do want to mention, soil temperatures, average soil temperatures right now in Cleveland at 2 inches under short cut turf are at 46 degrees. So your greens have probably slowed down dramatically, but your high cut turf, I would expect, are still up above the 50 to 55, maybe around that 55 degree temperatures on average. And again, if you look at the weather forecast, that prediction is that the polar vortex is not coming down. Right. Initially, we thought it was going to potentially leave a mark, but based on what the NOAA said yesterday, the polar vortex looks like it's getting locked up a little bit further north. And so we may not get into an extremely cold setting in any short-term period right here at the moment. Following on from that, however, the infamous bug doc, Dave Shetlar.
Thanks. And again, all I wanted to do was give a quick update of what I saw this fall or didn't see this fall. I didn't get many reports of people having to deal with some late season white grub problems. And I found it kind of interesting when I did my grub dig in mid-October. That was basically about 2 weeks later than I normally like to do my grub digs, but I'm glad I waited, because virtually all I found was about half mature third instar Japanese beetles. In my plot, it was 95% Japanese beetle grubs and only about 5% mass chafers. So the mass chafers really did take it on the chin this season. I had hypothesized that maybe the pupae had drowned back in May, and that seems to have been the case. On the other hand, the Japanese beetles did survive, though they apparently were very late in laying their eggs and developing. What does that mean? That means you don't see any damage this fall, but you might see some activity in the springtime when those grubs do overwinter and have to finish their development in the spring. So we might see some animal digging actually more in the springtime than we did this fall. Also, virtually all of Ohio experienced a massive emergence of native crane flies. There were a couple of entomologists, Dr. Curtis Young over in the western part of the state and myself here in the central part of the state. We collected those crane flies, and virtually all of them were native species. And so the wet weather last spring apparently was very conducive for their survival and development. Now, my background is a bronze cutworm, and I put that one up here specifically because I did see a pretty good flight of bronze cutworm adults in my light traps. This is an unusual cutworm in that it's a cool or cold season cutworm. The larvae actually develop under the cover of snow and in mild conditions. And so if you see what may appear to be snow mold damage next spring, check it out carefully, because if it's just thinning turf, it may be the bronze cutworm. But if it's turf just laying down flat, indeed that was snow mold. So that's kind of my update. We'll talk more about those. I've got an update in the OTF conference of what I saw and what might be the influences of weather in the future. We're also bringing in probably the top turfgrass entomologist, new rising star, Dr. Ben McGraw from Penn State. He does a tremendous number of studies over in Pennsylvania, primarily on the annual bluegrass weevil. And so he'll be talking about the annual bluegrass weevil management, but he's also dealing with crane flies and other insects over in Pennsylvania, and working with the chemical companies, developing new techniques and new procedures to manage those. And so he's going to also be a panel speaker with us, and hopefully we can ask him the questions of what he's seeing in his research in that area. And of course, the bug doc, I'll be giving a couple of talks also. That's all I've got.
Thanks, Dave. Much appreciated. I'm sure the people that are watching for the invaluable information will have remembered the crane flies smacking them regularly off the face in the middle of September for a period of time. I know I did. It was like, you stupid insects. But it was also intriguing to know that that was something that was very different than what would be normal. Without further ado, the inimitable Joseph Rimelspach.
Well, hello, everyone. Hope you're doing well. And before I forget it, I just want to take a moment here and just thank everyone, industry-wise and individuals, for their support this year through a difficult year. Our Todd and my program on doing field research was just about up to our normal number of studies, et cetera, from last year. So I just want to thank everyone for their support and patience with us. As far as diseases, you know, kind of ho-hum. Of course, there's snow mold. Just a little mini review. Of course, there's two types, basically, the gray snow mold, Typhulas, and then the pink snow molds, the microdochiums. As far as the gray snow mold, I haven't seen it for years in central Ohio. And so Northeast Ohio, in the snow belt, they can still have that be a potential problem. And as far as applications on golf courses, if you have POA greens, POA greens, and that's your prime real estate on a golf course, of course, you want to take care of it and have your preventative applications down, especially for microdochium patch pink snow molds. And if we would get in a wet period this fall and it would cool down a little bit, that could become active and then just be kind of a chronic problem all winter. I know in Northeast Ohio, there's still, especially on courses that want pristine turf coming out of the spring, they're still applying it to fairways, but unusual compared to the rest of the state. One other thing I want to mention real quickly is our chart, our fungicide chart. I suppose many of you are aware of this. If you ever want to make reference to this, it's on our website, which is turfdisease.osu.edu. The one thing I want to mention, especially with like snow mold, there's a lot of combination products. On the back of the chart, we list combination products, but there's so many now, we don't have all of them there. But you can use the front of the chart then to identify the specific chemical name, the common chemical name, and then you can determine what classes you're working with and what kind of combination it is. So that may be helpful for you to determine that. I also want to mention that on the OTF conference, virtually, Dr. Joe Vargas from Michigan State, who has a wealth of information through his long career, will be talking about managing patch diseases on primarily golf course settings. And then also he'll be talking about IPM management of diseases on high cut turf. So hopefully you'll attend the OTF conference and show this year. And we're looking forward to hearing your feedback from the different talks and the way it's set up this year. So stay careful, be careful out there, stay healthy, and I'll turn it back to you, Ed.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it. Just from my end, remember, if you are going after seed heads, there's still a little bit of time. If you're in that process of putting down the early proxy applications, we have seen some benefit with the addition of Civitas with the proxy for seed head control in the spring. The other thing from the standpoint of the show, just to finalize the tracks, kind of Dave has talked about herbicides, Dave Shetlar has talked about insects, Palm Sports Turf, Joe, a little bit of the disease end of it. Remember, there'll be 3 tracks. So we'll have the lawn care, we'll have the golf track, and we will have a sports turf track. There's also an EM track, so the equipment managers have 2 days on the Tuesday and Wednesday. We've got Trent Manning coming in from Ainsley Golf Club. Further south, he's going to talk about using Google Docs. Gary Bogdansky, shop layout. Got some interesting stuff on small engines. And I will say this, folks, if you're kind of in a quandary about how the show is going to work, remember, we're looking to release the content on the 15th of December. It'll be, the majority of it is pre-recorded content. And then from the 4th to the 7th of January, we'll have a range of pre-recorded content with live talks, and some of that will have pesticide credit attached to it, some of it will not. What I would say to you is keep a close eye on the information coming out from OTF in regards to those components of it. If you have questions about the format, please get in touch with us. It's different, of course, this year, and we're working within the realms of what we're allowed to do. But we would hope that you have the time and wherewithal to support us on both sides. It's something that we definitely want to see as a success. And without further ado, I'll say go easy on the turkey next week, and stay. Stay positive and test negative. Right, that's how we go.